that's really the concept, right? Like I'm very good at like three or four things and, decent at 20. Like there's no reason anyone should pay me for those 20 things I can do decently when, you might be able to do them better than me. You should pay me for those five things that I'm really good at and only pay me when I'm like contributing there. And so that's how we've thought about this, is that how can we bring people in to do those certain tasks that they are the best in the world at, and then release them to go somewhere else and continue doing that great work.
Welcome to the In Factor, conversations about how great entrepreneurs started, stumbled, and succeeded. I'm Rebecca White, and today's guest is Cory Hymel. Cory is the director of BlockChain and leads all things Web3 at Gigster, a company dedicated to helping businesses develop software applications with the speed of a startup, coupled with the quality and expertise of top global talent. Cory's passion for gaming and tech led him to learn coding and start several businesses in the early years of mobile technology. He's gone on to build a career in leading-edge innovation areas, and today, Cory is a global expert on blockchain and Web3. Cory has a knack for simplifying what many find a very confusing space. Join me today to learn more about blockchain, Web3, and the opportunities in crypto and NFTs. I know you're going to love this episode. So Cory, thank you for joining me today on the Impactor.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Well, I'm excited. We've had a few minutes to talk here before we've gotten started. I've enjoyed that, and I'm really looking forward to hearing more about you. You got that really cool background, cool microphone, and you're working in a cool space. So I know it's going to be a lot of fun, and I'm going to learn a lot. So I want to start out by talking about what you're doing right now. You're the director of blockchain at Gigster. So tell us a little bit about Gigster. I took a look. It looks like it's a place where you can get talent to help you build things pretty quickly, and I guess on the blockchain. And so tell us a little bit more about what you do, and maybe for some of our audience who isn't that familiar with blockchain, tell us a little bit about blockchain.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, so Gigster itself is about 10 years old now. I've been with the firm for probably 7 years of that. My background's in core engineering, but have been, kind of moving in and out of a lot of different places over my career. And where I sit now at Gigster is leading, basically all things Web3, right? Which is powered, basically the underlying infrastructure of the metaverse, stuff is all, the underlying tech is blockchain. But, in this role, what we do and what we kind of do as a company is that, when we were founded, we were kind of founded on this idea that the future is decentralized, right? And it is distributed. And this was pre-COVID, back when going to the office was the thing to do, it seems kind of wild now, right?
I know it does, doesn't it?
Yeah. And so our founders, had this idea that, that the future would be distributed. And, they were both very successful in their previous careers, and they wanted to, and they saw this need of like, top engineers, are really like top people in any field, are generally very enticed to work on like passion projects or work on new tech. And like for us specifically, like, emerging technologies. So they said, okay, well, if we have engineers at Google, Facebook, Amazon, Oracle, all of the big ones, and the really top performers have extra cycles to work on these passion projects, like how can we make that happen? Like, what do we need to do to make that happen? And they took a step back and said, we really kind of have to redefine how work gets done. In this traditional notion of, if you're going to do a project, you've got to have some people put on it, right? Like I think the historical way is like, we'll get 5 people full-time over the next 6 months and they'll finish it. And so we looked at that and said, wow, you could actually do this a lot differently with kind of like fractional roles and people moving in and out. And if you build a platform and data and tools to like track performance and stay ahead of risk. It really enables all of this. And when people ask what Gigster does, like Gigster itself is really a data company on people and how people perform and work in the context of teams on a global scale. And we just happen to apply that tech to emerging technologies, and my area specifically is blockchain. So with that, we're about 600 engineers, project managers, designers, and we work with some of the largest brands and a lot of the biggest project and NFT and blockchain and crypto projects that you've probably heard of. We're heavily involved behind the scenes on the actual development side of all of that. And I got introduced to blockchain in 2015, somewhere around there. Was out in San Francisco, which was the scene for all things wild and new, and got plugged in early on. And it was back then it was like everyone's like, oh, blockchain, Bitcoin, this is going to be something. But it was I'd go to these meetups and it's like 7 people in a room and they're just like talking about a white paper, and there's like some free, donuts and cold coffee. And they're like, oh, this is going to be the future. And you look at it now where you have these conferences with, 50,000 people attending. And it's amazing to like connect the dots back and how quickly that's happened. And, I think to tie into some of, well, I guess I'll stop there. There's more that I can weave into this, but that is at the high level Gigster.
Yeah. There's a whole lot there to talk about. A lot about your journey and a lot about Gigster as well. So let's unpack some of that I talk a lot about entrepreneurial mindset and possibility mindset and thinking big. And you mentioned one of the things that I find really interesting. You mentioned earlier that it's hard to even think about the way we worked pre-pandemic. And my children are working remotely, pretty much full time. It's a completely different world. And you're talking about engineers that have been working. A lot of them have been working remotely for much longer than the pre-pandemic time. But now I guess a lot of corporations are really kind of buying into that a lot more. So I'm kind of curious, before we kind of dig into you personally, just on the Gigster and the talent side, are most of these engineers working on multiple projects? Do they continue to, is this kind of a slash kind of thing, and how's that work? What's it like for a typical software engineer today?
Yeah, that's a great question. And the way that we categorize how we run teams, and to make it clear, like, we're not a staff aug firm, so we're not here to just like hire you out people. Like Gigster manages everything in our platform and our tools and the whole talk track pitch around data. Like that is our special sauce. And, what we call it is elastic teams, meaning that if you're building, like, let's say a blockchain app. Let's say you're building an NFT marketplace, right? Similar to NBA Top Shots, or if you're even, regardless of what you're building, you're building a machine learning platform. You're building something there. Is that there are people that can contribute very highly at certain parts of the project, but maybe not necessarily contribute in other sprints or other forms of the phases of the project. So there's no reason to keep them around, right? But tracking and knowing when that is very complex. And that's kind of what we've been solving over the years. And I say been solving because I don't know if it'll ever be fully solved, but been fighting the good fight. So when we look at engineers, like, they're on our projects, we will have some people full-time, right? And this is, either the project managers or maybe the lead engineer. But other than that, like, we look to kind of supplement people in and out when we need them and when we don't. So yes, to answer your question, engineers might be working on multiple projects at one time, but they're fractionally contributing to each one where they're able to provide the most value. And I think that's really the concept, right? Like, I'm very good at like 3 or 4 things and, decent at 20. Like, there's no reason anyone should pay me for those 20 things I can do decently when, you might be able to do them better than me. You should pay me for those 5 things that I'm really good at. and only pay me when I'm like contributing there. And so that's how we've thought about this, is that how can we bring people in to do those certain tasks that they are the best in the world at, and then release them to go somewhere else and continue doing that great work, rather than just having them stuck in this thing. And that's what we saw. A lot of people, like a lot of engineers that were really unhappy at, a lot of the big tech firms. They're like, out of my week, I might do 2 hours worth of interesting work, and then the rest of it, it's just either one, I'm not doing anything, or two, I'm just kind of like doing odds and ends, like busy work. And this again was at the time, like I'm sure you remember, like when Silicon Valley was crazy, that Google, like tech firms were just hiring engineers so their competition wouldn't hire them, and they had nothing for them to do. They're like, I'll give you $250,000 a year, just don't go work for company B.
Yeah,
And
right.
yeah, and these people that are very, very smart, very creative individuals, that idea of just complacency and not doing anything drove them mad. And we found a great product market fit at the time, and since then have been kind of growing.
Yeah, the FANG engineers, right? A lot of them only working like maybe 25 hours a week for their company, if that. And then,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, so it's filling in that, because they want to work on things they're passionate about. What does that mean for the future, the future employee and the future worker? Because, what I'm hearing you say is that people in this space get very specialized. Would you say that's the case?
Sure.
I know as an academic, that's kind of, when you're working on your doctoral work, you know everything there is about the right hind leg of a frog, right? Whether it
Yeah.
matters or not in academics. But I guess the point is there room for the generalist in this world? And, what does this mean for continuous learning? Because I know even if you're specializing, there's always more to learn. And this is getting us a little off track, but I'm really fascinated by this topic of what the
Mm-hmm.
future workplace, what the future is going to be like, and what the future worker is going to be like.
Yeah, I mean, and I'll give you my vision on it, and one that I would say that Gigster as a firm is pretty closely aligned with is that, there's an interesting statistic from Gartner that 64%, and like, and again, to frame this right, I'm going to talk about tech. So when we say the future worker, like I don't want someone in some other field to try to compare and be like, you're never going to be able to fractionally have a surgeon working. It's like, look, I understand this isn't for everything, but of specifically right now the IT market, that 64% IT leaders don't adopt emerging tech to stay competitive, not because they can't afford it, or like the need isn't there. It's because they can't find the people to work on it. And there's a massive, massive talent gap, specifically, I mean, across industries, but again, my area of my right leg of the frog
Right,
is
right.
with tech, right? And so we see the future of work as very liquid. We're moving to a much more liquid workforce, and this one I do believe is cuts across a lot of industries. And when Uber came out, they made that very abundantly clear that people are willing to fractionally work when they want to, and that they're comfortable with that. And so if I look at the future engineer, coming down the road, it's that, and we hope to provide a model of working that allows people to contribute to projects that they care about, to be able to fractionally move in between projects. And this all helps drive the continuous learning. It helps drives exposure, to not only like different projects, but different cultures and different people as we begin to like globalize more heavily. That providing infrastructure and tooling that makes this possible is really kind of one of our missions around it. And I think the future workforce is going to be very interesting in that you see it's much, again, the fluidity of it, of people moving in and out, and moving towards high value roles more quickly than they may have in the past. So it's exciting. It's going to be exciting to watch and unfold. That's for sure.
It is. And I think it's an exciting time for a worker because, there's you're only limited by your own limits, in terms
Hmm.
of what you can do these days. I think, there is a real role for companies like Gigster because with this kind of fluid workforce, there's a lack of structure a lot of times, and organizations like yours can provide that. So,
Hmm.
well, let's dig into a little bit more about Cory. I'd love to know, I like to talk about how everybody kind of went on my podcast, how they got to where they are, because that pathway is always really interesting. So I know you started as a center at the Center for Advanced Robotics Research with FedEx. So tell us about your background. Is this something you did, as a kid? Were you always playing around with computers and robotics and games and all that, or how did you get here, and what kind of background do you have, and take us through some of your career.
The lives and times of Corey. Yeah, I'll try
That's perfect.
I'll try not to bore you. No, so my career's been fortunately very interesting. It's been a lot of zigging and zagging. I got into computers kind of early on through video games, and this was a long time ago now. And in high school, I started. We had a elective programming class, and I was extremely fortunate that like maybe my second year of taking it, that we had a graduate student that came and taught like 2 days a week or something. His name was David, and he was like absolutely incredible. And it was one of those. It was like one of those years where like he was so cool and like so engaging that it was like one of those like very few moments in my life that I can remember looking back and being like, that was the pivot. Like that was the time when I was like, oh, this is going to be it. Like this is where I'm headed. And from there, really just kind of really started to just get all about understanding programming, understanding how computers work. Did fortunately was because I was so interested, did well in the class, and then got people to vouch for me to go do research through the FedEx Institute of Technology on kind of like self-driving tugs. And this was again back in like 2009 or something like that. So I got exposed to, again, really creative, interesting people early on, just by happenstance. I got introduced to that role randomly through one of my teachers in high school's connection. I was like trying to find anything that I could do, and he was like, yeah, we'll vouch for you to go in. And so I went onto this research team, and like by far the most underqualified person that should have ever stepped through that door. I mean, it was embarrassing. I mean, you're in there with like PhDs that are working and pioneering AI, and there I am, like literally a high school student who just wrote his third Hello World program, and they're like, why is this kid here? But got super interested in that. Started going to school, and got introduced through a classmate. I think it was a classmate. Oh no, I think I was posting stuff online about games, and this was 2009, maybe 2000, yeah, 2009. And a guy reached out to me. He's like, "Hey, I'm looking to start a game company," and this was in Memphis, Tennessee, so not a tech hub by any stretch of the imagination, like the tech desert. And he was like, "I want to make a game for the Xbox." I was like, "Well, here we go." Like, yes, absolutely, sign me up. His name was Chris. Awesome guy. And went, helped him get this company lifted off the ground. I was still going to school at the time, trying to go to school at the time. And it was called Resolute Games. So we got that up and rolling. And, while we were in it, it was this, we did, and so we started on the Xbox game, and it was like, this is way too hard. There's no way that we're ever going to be able to do this. And this was also when the iPhone was launching, the first iPhone. And when, Steve and team over there decided to open up the App Store, we were like, oh my God, we've got to get away from the Xbox, and we got to go to the iPhone. We've got to make games for the iPhone. And I was all in. I was like, this is it. And while we were doing it, we were really kind of the only show in town as far as doing mobile apps. And this was, I can't stress enough, this was way before anyone cared about their smartphones, right? They're like, give me the BlackBerry with the keyboard. That's all I need. And while we were doing it, we had, I think it was Elvis Presley Enterprises at the time, came and we're like, we want to pay you to make an app for Graceland. We were like, you're gonna pay us to do this? Like, wait, you guys are getting like the meme, you guys are getting paid? Like, hold on, like what? Um, and so that we did, and we built it, and the company at the time wanted to continue. They were very bought in on the game scene, but I had saw it and I was like, there's a huge opportunity to make money here. Like companies are going, and I was obsessed with my phone. I was like, this is the key, this is the power. Like businesses are going to be all about this very soon. How do I get in on it? And so I got with one of my roommates at the time, and we founded one of my first companies called Prime Notion, and we were basically focused on doing enterprise mobility. Again, before mobility was a thing, and we were working, because in Memphis we were working with like St. Jude, and and we got this like super tiny little hole in the wall office, and I'll never forget like one of the first times that we had a customer come by. It was like just us two that were doing anything. I was doing all the programming, he was doing the business stuff. We knew they were coming. We had no money, so we went to like a rental furniture place, and they were like, if you bring it back in 4 hours, like you get your deposit back, and it's less than a full day. So we like load up there, we go bring all this furniture in, we bring some of our friends in. We're like, look, just get on your laptop, sit in the room, put in headphones, don't say anything. We've got to make this look like legit. And so we had I think it was maybe been from FedEx. They wanted to come see our like our operation, which is a very distant cry from any operation. So they came and they saw it, and they're like, this looks I mean, they didn't say this looks legit, but they seemed happy. And as soon as they left, we packed up all the furniture as soon as we couldn't see them anymore, and like brought it all back and returned it. And it was that was the and when we started to land those bigger contracts with like St. Jude and working in the AutoZone and some of these, it was like, oh wow, like we can make this happen, which was another kind of like big pivot moment of like, this isn't that bad. Like we can, I can do this. So that was going well. And as with all like, upward trajectories, there are downward ones as well. We were getting short on talent. So I, moved to Austin, Texas, which was in hindsight, probably a pretty terrible idea to leave the business to go there. At this time too, there was a huge gap in the market that we were seeing around GPS at the time. It wasn't bad, but it wasn't great, and Apple had launched, they call it the iBeacon functionality, which basically allowed you to put these little Bluetooth low energy like beacons in a room. And so while GPS can get you to the building, it's very hard to know where you're at in the building or what room you're in. And so we had been talking with some people, and, kind of came up like, wow, if we could offer museums or stores or conferences a way to know like what booth you're standing in and unlock digital content on the back end of it, that could be really big. So we started another company, a co-founder and me at the time, called Symbol, which was like simple BLE. Like, it's amazing how ridiculous things look in hindsight. And like just riding on the ego train of, we had something working. We're like, we're going to do this, with no idea like what manufacturing means. And it's just a different beast. Like, it is just so beyond anything. I mean, we're like 22, and we're like, we don't need funding. I was also on a huge, like, Steve Jobs is our savior, like mindset and kick. And I was like, no, this is it. And we're not taking funding. We can make it happen. All in all, basically tanking the first company that could have been successful to try to self-fund the second one, which ended up tanking as well, because by the time we ran all the money into it, it was, things were bad. We're trying to set up, figure out how to do sourcing out of China. How do you get cases and molds made? How do you do spare pool and inventory management, things that were just way over ahead. And, we were too, maybe now I can say we were a little too egotistical to like go ask for help. We were like, we'll just will it into existence. And that doesn't work. I can tell you firsthand. So we left, we ended up selling the IP to a firm out of North Carolina that does like product engineering. So they saw it and they were like, oh, wow, like a lot of our products that we act like physical products that we make, this would be great IP and stuff for us to integrate into it. So we were able to exit to them. And I went and worked and led their connected technologies area, which is basically anything IoT. My team and I was held and did that for a while. Needed some time off, so took a year and a half off and lived in a van. I scrounged together like $6,000 and bought a van and converted it out, and just left and took off on the road, and went to Asia for a little while. And then, when I was traveling, I had to make some money somehow, right? And I got introduced to Gigster. Was like, hey, you can fractionally provide your expertise. And I was like, well, that's, I'm looking for like 10 hours of work a week. And so the model fit well. Started working with them. My now fiance and I had sold the van, we're planning to move to Asia. We're in Thailand. And, I was like, we'll live here for a while. I'll work at nights. I think the first 1 a.m. call I had, I was like, there's no way this is never, this is never going to happen. And by that time we were basically down to like $0 left. And Gigster made an offer to come on full time. So we were like, do we have an option? So, they helped pay for us to get back over, move to San Francisco, and then kind of, been with them since. But I hope that wasn't like too much of a ramble, but it's been a bit of a back and forth.
No, it's a great story. And, there's so much in there that I think is really valuable for anybody who is either on the path of entrepreneurship or considering it. And, one of the things I heard in there, I mentioned to you earlier when we were talking that I do a lot of research around entrepreneurial mindset and possibility mindset and limiting thoughts. And, one of the things I heard when you first started down this path was that you said yes, even when you didn't know what you were going to be doing. I mean, it's always kind of been my MO also. I jump in and then figure it out. And so there is, it works sometimes and sometimes it doesn't. And what's interesting is I think probably, you may not agree, but I think most people believe that they learn the most from the failures that they have along the way. And what I talk about with students is that it's about executing past failure. So it doesn't mean, you're not always on the right trajectory. And sometimes you have to, we call it pivoting a lot of times, but you have to change course. And when you make those changes, it's like an airplane, you're going from point A to point B. You don't stay on a path. It's correcting back and forth until you get there. And that's kind of, that's what I heard. So I thank you for sharing that. I think it's a great story, and I heard a lot in there. As an entrepreneur myself, I can remember the days of building a company out of what we called the Brady Bunch house. It was a little house that was attached to my former university, and we were able to be in an incubator there in the upstairs. And some of the things we did and getting our first customer. So but those times are also, they're very special in a way because you usually remember them with fond memories. But what I also find interesting is that you've been very interested in, you understand the importance of timing and opportunities, and you probably learned some of that the hard way, but also you've been very forward thinking. And blockchain is something that most everybody in the business world now, at least, is somewhat